Podcast, TruthSeekah's podcast. Buckle up, everyone. We're going to talk aliens, UFOs, ghosts, spiritual and paranormal. From all of the three moons, beyond your wildest dreams. Dear Dead Tony. Nice.
TruthSeekah and or its affiliates are not responsible for any strange phenomena that may occur during or after listening to this podcast, which may include the following: heightened sensitive awareness, psychic abilities, UFO sightings, alien contact, time loss, out-of-body experiences, ringing in the ears, ESP, lucid dreaming, increased synchronicities, astral projection, telepathy, stronger intuition, levitation, miraculous healings, and or remote viewing. Please be advised to listen at your own discretion.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the TruthSeekah Podcast.
Gargoyles! Psychics! Everything's ungodly! Dark savage!
Streaming live at TruthSeekah.com.
She's not a Christian!
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark savage stuff!
And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
Hey, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm your host, TruthSeekah. This is the TruthSeekah Podcast. Excited, delighted to be with you guys again today. Got an awesome show planned for you. Got an awesome subject matter that we're going to be getting into. We're going to be talking about quitting, losing, starting over, and what that means for someone, and not to be afraid to do that. You know, when we have things stacked up against us, sometimes it seems like we're in over our head and things like that. For me, just what's been the story of my life just throughout looking back, man, it's the fact that I've let my setbacks be like a slingshot to propel me where I need to go. So we're gonna talk about today. I'm gonna give you some of my examples and my stories, but we're gonna hear from the man himself, Dr. Stanley Robertson, here in a few minutes. I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who has supported my work via Patreon. This podcast is not possible without your help. So thank you again from the bottom of my heart, everybody who is supporting. If you'd like to support, please head on over to patreon.com/TruthSeekah. There you get access to my entire discography of work, unreleased podcast, and some fan exclusive stuff over there. You get access to our Thursday night School of the Mystics, Sunday morning seer class, the community aspect to what we're building here on the podcast as well. So yeah, make sure y'all go over to check that out, patreon.com/TruthSeekah. Also, want to let everybody know over at the shop, truthseekah.com/shop, I just released this morning our Sacred Geometry collection of clothing that I've been working on for some time. So there's some new merch available for everybody who wants to support. Go ahead and jump into today's discussion. Brother, Dr. Stanley, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Derek,
man, how
thank
are
you. Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on. Actually, I'm pretty excited to share a little bit of information about how people can disengage from the things that don't work. In other words, how you can become a successful quitter.
That's good. And there's all of these preconceived notions. And I even heard, I was listening to a interview the other day, and they were talking about quitting, and someone threw out the term. They said, they were talking about rehab, and they said rehab's for quitters, man. You know, and they just look at quitting as being like this negative thing, or the fact that you have to admit that you failed or you messed up, and now you got to backtrack for those in the public eye, and you've been putting time and money and effort into this thing, and then it doesn't work out. you have to humble yourself and backtrack, but it can be the best thing that's ever happened to you, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, two things that you just said that is a little bit disturbing for me in terms of people understanding why you need to give up something. Number one is that the reason why we don't want to quit, the reason why we don't want to disengage is because somehow society has taught us. It's almost like we've been brainwashed. It's been drilled into our psyche that you can never give up. And if you do, then you are a, quote, loser. In other words, the word quit has become synonymous with loser, which is really unfortunate because it prevents us from disengaging from things that we ought to disengage from. So I think that's one of the issues that we have going on. Another issue is that when you look at the things, let's take your example. If you need to give up something, let's say you want to go to rehab and someone says, oh, you have to admit that, that didn't work out. You've invested all this time. You've invested all this money. That is something that we refer to as the sunk cost mentality, sunk cost. And what I mean by sunk cost is that if you make decisions based on past history, in other words, you've already spent the money. So now you keep doing something because you spent a lot of money or a lot of time or effort in the past. Well, it doesn't matter what happened in the past. What we should be concerned about is the future. In other words, if you continue doing the thing that you're doing, is that going to bring you better results? Is that going to get you where you want to go? If it's not, you should stop doing it. You should not keep doing something. Let me just give you a quick example, if I might. There was this back in, I guess, the 1960s, we had something called the Vietnam War. The American president at that time had gotten sucked into the war based on this thing called the domino theory. The domino theory was just this concept that if you can bring down North Vietnam, then you might be able to bring down other communist countries. They called that the domino theory because they figured the collapse of one communist regime could affect the collapse of other regimes around the world. So we got sucked into the war based on that. Very quickly, we had problems. Our soldiers, we started losing. Our guys, our troops were demoralized. They could not win the war. And then the advisors told the president, this is a no-win situation. There is no way for us to come out of this good, so we should cut our losses. The president at that time said, no, we can't quit because of all the lives that have been lost. If we come out, we're going to look like losers. America looks like it lost. So therefore, they continue to engage. And the problem so that is one of the problems with this idea of the sunk cost. So we should not be saying that we've done X in the past. We've lost all these lives in the past because it's not going to justify losing more lives in the future. If you lost money in the past, and you know that this thing is not going to work, it's not going to lead to your success, you need to quit. You should not continue doing it because you're just going to lose more money. It doesn't make any sense.
Perfect, man. But what I want to know, I want to know how this became personal for you. Like, what lit a passion within you to write this book, and how did you have to come to wit's end and say, you know what, I've made some wrong decisions, or whatever? What's your story, and why is this personal for you?
Yeah, I've got two things that actually happened for me. One of them is when I was much younger, I understood the benefits of quitting, the benefits of giving up things. When I was a teenager, I was working and I had gotten my check. I was happy, a couple of $100. Because I'm talking 20 years ago. So I was very happy. I was on my way home and I met this guy. This is when the VHS recorder had just come out. That thing was like $600-700. So this guy was going to sell me one for just a couple of $100. I was happy because that's all I could afford, because that's all I had in my pocket. Long story short, I went ahead and bought the VCR from him, took it home, and I was going to plug it in to make sure, see everything work. I'm excited. I opened the box and I pull out a box of bricks. Now, this obviously is devastating, right? That just kind of led me into this life of petty theft because I had to get my money back somehow, right? So, I started stealing and doing all this other, nonsense. Eventually, I went to the Marine Corps. And when I got into the Marine Corps, I continued my life of petty thievery. And I ended up in the brig, court-martial, losing all my stripes. And that's when I had to make a decision, because that is a very low and devastating point for a young person. Well, that I realized then, you've got to be able to give up some things. You've got to stop doing some things in your life if you want to advance yourself. If the thing you're doing is not getting you where you want to be. Now, of course, at the time I thought, kind of a life of petty crime could get me where I wanted to be, which was a lot of money and successful. But I figured out very quickly that that's not really going to work. So I needed to disengage. I needed to come up with a new plan. So that was one of the things. And then the second thing that happened when I actually wrote this book, I wrote this book last year. And the thing that happened when I wrote this book is my son is now in the Marine Corps, and he was trying to make a decision whether he wanted to re-enlist or not. And I was talking to him, and I got the sense from him that he was struggling with, if he get out, he's an officer in the Marine Corps. So if he decided to get out, people were going to look at it as, oh, you quit. You should have kept going. You should have continued to do it because, you can do this. You're 20 some years old. You'll be 40 years old. You can retire. You'll be set for the rest of your life. You know the drill, right? So I'm having this conversation with him, and it just strikes me. It hits me like a ton of bricks, if you can get where I'm going with
a box of bricks.
So it strikes me like a ton of bricks. And I said to him, at first I was saying to him the same thing that everybody else was saying, and that is that you should keep going. You should not stop. You got to do this because this is great. This is good for you. And then I realized I'm doing the same thing to him that I was doing to myself, and that the world is doing to him and a lot of other folk. And that is, we're encouraging people to do things because of the stigma attached to the idea of quitting. So that's when I said, you know what? I went to sleep that night around 2:00 in the morning. One word hit my brain, and that word was quit. Quit. And I said, you know what? That's the book that I'm going to write.
That's awesome, man. There's so many different examples that kind of tie into that. I mean, I can look at what I'm doing. I didn't quit my job. I was let go from my job, but it kind of propelled me to pursue my passion and my dream. You know what I'm saying? And so there's a lot of people who are like stuck at these quote unquote dead end jobs. They don't want to be there. They're miserable at their job. They got to do something, but there's like a gulf in between that quitting and then all the naysayers. I mean, it was hard for me too. Like my wife's family, talking about insurance and all of this kind of stuff and all of these reasons not to quit. But when you have to weigh them out on this scale, like pursuing your passion, pursuing your dream, you have to stick with it, and you got to step out, right?
Yeah, you do. A lot of people are working jobs that they hate. And when I say hate, I literally mean hate. In other words, they're going to jobs every day and they're being stressed out. Now, the problem with this, number one, is you're not going to perform at your best level.
Exactly.
You're never going to be the best you can be working and doing something that you hate doing every day. So that's kind of a given. But the other hidden problem is that it is causing us as Americans stress, and the stress impacts your mental and physical health. So in other words, by going to jobs we hate, continuing to do something that doesn't work for you is literally killing you. And it's not just jobs. Jobs is one area where relationships, especially when it comes to marriage. There is a taboo in terms of marriage. If you, for example, let's say the relationship is not working out, the relationship is abusive, whatever is going on, we are very reluctant to give up that marriage or that relationship, again, because of what society says and how society will look at you like, oh, you should have stuck it out, or it could have worked, or you just couldn't make it work. So in other words, it's a reflection on you somehow because the relationship didn't work out. And this, again, is very bad. So we have people stuck in abusive, toxic relationships because they refuse to give up the relationship. And that's just not good.
Yeah. Especially when it's your second or third relationships, You just keep quitting, keep giving up, right?
Yeah, I had this young lady that I know. She's out in Southern California, and she was in a marriage. It was very abusive. She was overweight, and she said that she had been fat shamed, not only by people, in her community, but her husband actually fat shamed her. One day she had a baby, and he comes into the room after the delivery of the baby. He reaches down on the bed and kind of lifts up the excess skin on her stomach after the delivery. And he says to his wife, "Do you think I could be attracted to that?" Now, this is obviously very abusive type situation for her, but she would not give up that relationship. Now, eventually she did, but it took her a long time. When she finally gave up the relationship, she lost all her weight. Her self-esteem skyrocketed. She became a very successful author and yoga instructor. So just because she would not give up that abusive relationship, it affected her mental state and her physical health. And when she finally did give up, she became this very happy, successful, beautiful woman, just because she was able to quit that relationship, which was bad in the first place. So it really makes no sense for us to allow these external factors to cause us to stick with things that are harmful.
Yeah. Man, let me ask you about this, because there's this notion, this popular term, phrase we've heard, let your haters be your motivators, right? And I remember being in whether ministry or jobs or business or starting something that, get a couple days, couple weeks, couple months into it, you're like, man, I'm not supposed to be doing this, and you're still investing money, you're still wasting time, you're still making connections that you're not supposed to be making, simply because you don't want the haters to say, told you so. So it's like, let the haters be your motivators, but it's like, no, let your passion be your motivator. Let God be your motivator, right? Versus your haters, because you'll be doing stuff and afraid to pull out because of the fear of what they're going to say. And that, we told you from the beginning this wasn't right, or whatever the case is, right?
Yeah, I don't like haters. I don't like people who, I just don't like negative people, period. So if for me, I want to engage with people who are positive, people who are encouraging, people who are uplifting. It just doesn't make sense to spend my time and energy, because the things that people do, the things that people say, even the emotions that people bring to you impact you, because those things are tangible. Now, you might not be able to see them, right? You can't see emotions, you can't see feelings, you can't see words, but those things are tangible. Those things impact you. There is actually an energy field, and you probably already know this. There's an energy field that is created in human beings, and that impacts the other person who you are interacting with. So for me, I don't want to be in that space with a negative individual. So if the person is a hater, I'm out.
Yeah. Again, just, staying in something where you need to pull out. Like, it's funny too, we talk a lot about spirituality in the Bible and a lot of ancient texts and stuff like that. And it's really interesting when we hear like the word in Christianity, the word repent, turn from your sins, repent. And that word that comes from the Hebrew and breaks down to the Greek as well, the word metanoia, which means to have a change of thinking, to stop doing the thing that you're doing, essentially turn from the things that are killing you. Like, stop doing the bad stuff, learn from your mistakes, and have a change of heart. Have a change of mind is literally what it translates to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think we do. I think that is a very important concept. You need to change your mind on many things in many instances. And there are a lot of factors that would cause us to be in a position where we should change our mind. So, for example, if you're doing something, you have a goal, you have something that you're trying to do. If the thing is not working out for you, then you should change. You shouldn't keep doing it. But also, you should not keep doing something just because, and this is going back to your concept of haters, you shouldn't keep doing something just because other people are saying you should do it, or you shouldn't quit doing it just because other people are saying you should quit. In other words, you should not stop or repent or change your mind. That should be an internal decision based on your goals, based on whether your what it is you want to do, what it is you want to achieve in life, not what someone else does. But one point that I would make here, though, is that we know that external pressures cause us to do things that we don't want to be doing. But there's also something internal in our brains that impacts that decision as well. There was a study that was done, which we refer to as the jigsaw puzzle study. In the jigsaw puzzle study, they took two groups of people. They gave the first group of people a jigsaw puzzle, and they said, work this thing until you're done, which they completed it. The second group, they gave the same puzzle. They said, work this thing until you're done, except they interrupted them. They would not let them finish the puzzle. What they found is that the group who completed the puzzle went on about their day. They never thought about it again. The second group, who they interrupted, they would not let them finish. They continued to think about the puzzle. They thought, oh, wow, I could have finished that, or that wasn't fair, or whatever their thinking was. So what they determined in that study is that the human brain is hardwired for completion. In other words, whenever something is interrupted, if you're not able to finish or complete a task, your brain is going to keep going back to that thing, thinking about the fact that you were not able to complete it. So again, we have these external pressures, but we also have this internal working inside our brain that sometimes prevent us from giving up things, because our brain is hardwired for completion. So we keep doing it, even though it may be detrimental to us.
Against all odds, there's a sense of like victory or like you say, completion, and we want to see the best in it. We want to look at that spouse or whatever and think and see the best in them, or change the circumstance and say, shift the blame even, or whatever the case is, making up these weird scenarios just so that it would work out, right? And it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes, many times, we need to quit.
Yeah, that's true. Now, I do believe that it is beneficial for us to think, positive. It's beneficial for us to think it's going to work out. We should always think this is going to work out. This is going to be good. This is going to get me where I want to go. I think we should always think that. But we have to be realistic in that thinking. So in other words, we've got to evaluate what's happening. You should never be negative. If you get to the point where you think this is not going to work, well, at that point, it's a dead end, and that's when you should give it up. But until you get to the point where you recognize this thing is not going to work, you should always think it is going to work. No matter what the odds are, no matter what the circumstances are, it's always going to work out. Because normally it does work out. It's just that if you reach that brick wall and you get to the point where there's no way that I can get the results that I'm looking for, that's when you need to give that thing up.
Do you think that most people internally know that they should quit, but they won't? It's like, because there's some people who are just oblivious, they don't even know. But I think most people know, like, I'm grasping for straws here. They know they should give up, but it's the fear, the failure, the I told you so's that prevent them to just stay in there even longer.
I don't know if I don't know the numbers, like if most people think that way, but I do know that is a major problem. That may be the number one problem that causes people to not quit things, because we have these notions in our brain that, if I quit, it's going to be bad. I know this, this may not work out. I'm afraid. I'm afraid to quit the job because I may not find another job, or I'm afraid to give up this marriage because I don't want to be lonely, or whatever the situation is. So I think that in my mind, that is the number one problem that prevents us from disengaging. And this word disengaging, I've done a lot. I've read like every study. I've read every book that I could find on the subject of quitting. And there's actually a technical term for the notion of quitting, and it's called goal disengagement. And goal disengagement means that, so the idea of quitting is this. If you're going to quit something, it means you're doing something. So the research shows that if you're engaged in some activity that you are trying to make a decision as to whether you should give it up, the research refers to that as disengaging. So that's why it's called goal disengagement. And that's the technical term for quitting. Because if you read any studies, look at any research, you'll never see the word quit, but you will always see the word goal disengagement. So there are two things behind the concept of goal disengagement that needs to happen for you to successfully give up something. One is you need to give up the effort. In other words, stop doing the thing. The second one, which is more difficult, is that you need to give up the commitment. So you need to give up the effort and the commitment in order to be successful, in order to successfully disengage from something. So we can give up, and most people can give up the effort. In other words, they can stop doing the thing. But the problem is we have a very difficult time giving up the commitment. In other words, letting go mentally, letting go, we're attached to that person. We're attached to that house. We live in, California, for example, and there's wildfires all over the place. There's earthquakes. And we say, I'm going to move. I don't want to live here anymore. Or we live in New Orleans and, and there's floods all over the place. Or we live in Chicago and there's 50 degrees below wind chill. And we say, I'm not going to stay here anymore, but we are attached, from some kind of emotional attachment or some other attachment to this particular space. So the point is that we can give up the effort, but it's very difficult to give up the commitment. And that may be one of the problems based on what you're describing, is that people may know internally that something is not going to work out, but the emotional attachment prevents them from quitting.
If you're in a place where you're not thriving, you're not wanted, and deep down within that it's not going to work because you're not supposed to be doing it, the best thing to do is just to quit, right? And I think it helps everybody, because if you're on a job that you're not fulfilled at, you're not supposed to be there, you want to quit, but then the bills tell you no, you can't quit, or whatever situation it is, like you're making a bad work environment. Not, it could be you're a disgruntled employee, you're just not happy, you're not fulfilled, you don't take your job seriously. If you're in a relationship, it never works out good. If you're in a place you need to back out, people will start going outside of their marriages, right? The longer they stay in it, they end up becoming a cancer to that thing. If you're in a business deal, if you're making in relationships, you're meeting people, you're wasting money. I can tell you countless times that I've started things trying to find my niche, and I would be in it for a few months or weeks, and I would know I need to pull out, but I got too many people involved. I got co-host on this podcast. We've invested a bunch of money into logos and animations and all of this stuff. And I'm like, man, I done spent $500-600 in 2 weeks on something that I'm just going to pull the plug on. And deep down, I already know that I'm going to pull the plug on it, because I can't see myself there in the future. But it's just like letting everybody know, and like now you let everybody down and the weight is on your shoulders and those type of things. And you may lose friendships over it. You know what I'm saying? And it's part of it. So that's a big burden to bear, that you want to just try to juggle and stay in it and take the burden of it all, versus have everything kind of implode on you and you be the reason why these other people aren't happy or whatever the case is. But it usually never works out. And if you know that's what's going on, just, go ahead and pull out, man.
Yeah, that's true. And don't forget, there's this thing called the sunk cost fallacy, which says that you should not make a decision about your future based on your past investment. So it doesn't matter how much you spent or, how many people you pulled into the project. If the thing is a dead end, you should not continue to do it just because, you spent X amount of dollars in the past. That's a bad decision. You got to think about your future. What makes the most sense going forward, not looking backward but looking forward. So that's one thing. The other thing, though, is you mentioned about jobs and stuff. Companies are now starting to recognize that it's better if an employee does not want to be there. A lot of times the employee will not quit for various reasons. They can't pull the trigger. So now companies are starting to give them incentive to quit. Amazon, one of the biggest companies in the world, if not the biggest company in the world, they actually have a quit bonus. A quit bonus is the CEO of the company. Every year he makes an offer to his employees. If you are not happy at working at Amazon, I will pay you to quit. So they are actually trying to give people incentive to quit because, people can't do it on their own for various reasons. It's very difficult to give up something. So, but Amazon recognizes that if you have someone there that doesn't really want to be there, that this is not really where their heart is, this is not the thing that gets them up in the morning, they recognize that person is costing them more money to employ than just to pay them to leave. And that's what they refer to as the quit bonus. And there's several companies that are doing that now. And I think that more and more companies will come to realize that, and more companies will get on that page as we go forward.
What are some of the signs if someone is in a relationship, a business, or wherever? I mean, I know it applies to like every area of our life, but what are some of the signs to let us know this has run its course? I need to back out. What are some of the signs of that for somebody who may seem oblivious to it?
Right. Well, one of the biggest signs, and again, it just kind of runs across the board. But, there's this thing in business, which we refer to as ROI, return on investment. If you are doing something and the thing that you are doing is not getting you the results that you want. In other words, it's not yielding the returns that you want. Now, whether it's a business venture or whether it's an investment, whether it's a relationship, it's just not yielding the results that you want. It's not getting you where you want to go. That is a very obvious sign that's in your face. It's like, you got this relationship or you got this business thing going on, but you're not getting where you want to be. Then you definitely ought to think about giving that up. Another sign is now the one that I just mentioned is kind of the return that you're getting. Are you getting the results that you want? The other one is, are you making any appreciable steps forward? In other words, if you're doing something, but the thing that you're doing is not propelling you forward, because obviously there's steps that you have to take if you're going through something, because anytime you build something, you're going to start, at one point, and you're going to go to point B and C and D and so forth until you get to, the result that you desire. If the thing that you're doing, you keep putting in more and more effort, but the return is becoming less and less, then that again is another time when you should think about giving up the thing. Yeah. And there's other things too that you should think about. You should think about quitting. Like, for example, you should think about quitting something if the thing that you're doing is something that you are doing this for someone else and you dread doing it. In other words, you hate doing the thing. Now, that if every morning you get up and you complain because you got to go, to do this thing, you got to go to work, or you wake up beside this particular person who you don't want to be with, and you're looking at the person like, oh my God, why am I here? If you find yourself in that space, you dread the thing. That's, again, a very big sign where you ought to consider giving up that thing, because, again, it's going to lead to a very bad physical and mental space for you and the other people that are involved.
Yeah, that's a big one, because people, we almost kind of end up there by default in many cases. We're defaulting on this job. When I was a kid, I didn't know I was going to be a garbage man. That wasn't my dream. I just ended up here because I needed a job, and I've been here 10 years now, right? So they wake up and they hate their job, but that's been their life. You know what I'm saying? They haven't, there are jobs that you can get where you wake up and you love to go to work, and you wake up and you love to clock in. You're in your zone, and it's different for everybody. You know, for me, I wake up, I get to do music, I get to work on podcasts and interview people and just create content. That seemed like something that wasn't possible at all to obtain and bring into my reality. But there are ways to do it, and people just get used to kind of being sick and tired, or used to staying in those failed relationships or jobs or whatever that they're building. But it's like universal. You can be in a relationship where you're in love, you know what I'm saying, where you look at that person and you still get starry-eyed, you're still, you know, in love with that person. But it's I don't know, it's different for everybody. Of like, I think envy has a lot to do with it. Like looking at someone who has a good marriage and like, man, I wish I had that. Or looking at someone who does music, in my example, say, man, I wish I could work on music, but I got to drive this truck for 17 hours today, right? These weird things. But being able to manifest that and bring it into your reality, you can't do both, right? You can try to kind of merge them together, but eventually you're going to have to quit one and really focus on the other. And so the things that I tell people, you know, part of that transition in whatever you're doing is try to do something today. Like, try to put some type of seed in the ground that's going to come up and manifest tomorrow, whether it's on that job or whatever the case is. You have to do something today to create the life that you want for yourself tomorrow, right?
Yeah, that's true. And in order to do that, you have to plan. You've got to plan. In other words, some people go through life and just kind of let life happen by happenstance. Yeah. Well, that's really not a good way to function. You need to think about what it is you want to be doing, and then you can come up with a plan to get there. And that's the thing about quitting. And when you quit something, you don't just stop doing it and, you know, that's it. You'll become dormant. That's not the idea. Yeah. The idea is, if you're doing something and that thing is not getting you where you want to be, is to give that up. But the key is to re-engage your efforts. The reason you quit something is so that you can free up that space, that mental space, that physical time. You want to free up that time from the thing that is not working so that you can actually do the thing that will work. And that's the point of quitting. So the point is not just to say, well, you know, I'm done. I'm finished with life. No, you're not finished with life, right? Until you die. So the idea is to disengage. And that's why the research refers to it as goal disengagement. The idea is to disengage from one thing so that you free up the time, the effort to do the next thing, which means that this is actually a good point too. And that is that if you're going to stop something, a lot of people have a problem with quitting things because, you know, they're afraid that they don't know what the future is going to look like. They don't know if they're going to get a new job. They don't know if they're going to find love again. They don't know if they're going to be lonely, whatever the situation is. One of the things that will help people make the transition, in other words, help you give up that first job, is if you find a new job. You can give up that old career if you create yourself a new career. You can give up that toxic relationship if you're open to finding new love. So the idea is, if you're going to give up things, if you're going to be successful at quitting the things that are not working for you, the best thing for you to do is plan your future. What are you going to do next? If you have a plan for what you're going to do next, it's a lot easier. Most people would prefer to say let's say you're going to, now, first of all, you shouldn't be overly concerned with the external world, but you know, we are, right? So most people would prefer to say to their spouse or to their friends or their family, most people would prefer to say, I quit this job and I'm going to be working for this company, versus saying, oh, I quit my job, and then period. So as long as you have something else, we feel okay with giving up the first thing. But if you don't have something else lined up, it's a very big problem to give up the first thing. And that's valid.
Except sometimes when it's with the relationship, because it's like, oh, you already with somebody? Y'all ain't even broken up yet. You already with them.
Right. True. That is true. Relationships are very delicate, for obvious reasons. And I'm not saying that you should, kind of have somebody waiting in the wing.
What a lot of people do, let's be honest, a lot of people who are in that situation.
But that's why a lot of relationships end, because they've got somebody waiting in the wings. But no, I'm not saying that you need to do that. I'm just saying that you need to be open. You need to be open to finding new relationships, to meeting new people. In other words, if you're going to give up a bad relationship, which you should, if a relationship is bad, if it's toxic, if it's abusive, you definitely want to give that up. And sometimes it may not have to be abusive. You just may be in a relationship that, the two people have different goals for their lives, and you're just not compatible. And that's cool too. Mm-hmm. If you're in that situation, you want to go ahead and disengage from that particular relationship. I'm not saying that you should have another person waiting in the wings, but I am saying that you should be open to meeting other people. You should be open to dating again. You should be open to finding the places where people, socialize and hang out that you may be interested in meeting.
Now, maybe this has something, it kind of ties in with the letting my haters be my motivators, but the shame that comes with it, with even the term like, quitters never win, or whatever the case is, winners never lose. I've heard it interchangeable,
Yeah. Winners never quit and quitters never win. That's a term that was coined by the football coach Vince Lombardi, and he said winners never quit and quitters never win. I guess his point was to motivate the players and motivate people to not give up, to not quit, and to continue to push through. And there is some validity to pushing through. The issue is, you don't want to keep pushing through on something that is a dead end. You don't want to keep pushing through on something that's going nowhere and something that you don't want to be doing. Now, if you're doing something that is not going anywhere, you don't want to do it. You just decided, hey, I don't want to play the horn anymore. I don't want to play the piano anymore. I want to run track. Fine. Quit playing the piano and go run track. So the idea of pushing through means if you're doing the thing that you know you don't want to be doing, that's not really working for you, not bringing you success, not making you happy, not fulfilling you, don't push through. Quit doing that thing. If you find the thing that you do want to do, let's say you want to be a track runner, now you do need to push through. If you know that this is what I want to be doing and I have to practice, I've got to get better, I've got to improve. Yeah, you want to push through that practice. You want to push through the next practice and the next practice and continue pushing yourself to excel, to be better. But again, pushing through and this idea that winners never quit and quitters never win will apply if the thing that you apply that concept to is the thing that works for you. If the thing is not working for you, then it's disaster to apply that concept.
Now, what about pipe dreams and unattainable goals that we set for ourselves, like backing out of that to really get a good understanding of what is attainable? Or maybe the pipe dream could be attainable, but there's practical steps to kind of get there and kind of pull, like a lot of times we put the cart before the horse, right? When we just want to go straight there, but there's different practical steps to get there. How do we get a right understanding with pulling out of some of these goals that we've set too early or too quick or whatever that we need to pull out of?
Yeah. Two things. Number one, pipe dreams are very tricky. Personally, I'm okay with people dreaming because that is what kind of gets our juices flowing. It gets our creativity going. So I'm okay with dreaming because there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying, I want to be a great actor, or I want to be a great ball player. Nothing wrong with that at all. So I think that dreaming. Now, when you say pipe dream, I'm assuming that you're kind of referring to something that's not even in the realm of possibility for you. Let's say that I don't know, you're 98 pounds and your pipe dream is to play professional football in the NFL. Yeah. Well, obviously that doesn't make any sense. So pipe dreaming from the standpoint that the thing that you're dreaming about is impossible physically, mentally, you don't have the competence, the skills or whatever, that could be a problem. But other than that, I think dreaming is a good thing for us to do. So I'm not opposed to that at all. Yeah. Now, in terms of setting your goals, though, you do have to come up with a plan. In my book, there are steps. I think there's 8 steps to set your goals. So once you do decide that you want to do something, whatever the thing is that you want to do, then there is a process that you can go through in order to figure out what the thing is, how to do it, set your goals, break them down into small and manageable pieces, and then enlist the people and the resources that you need. Then you have to, of course, verify or kind of prioritize your list. Then you've got to go ahead and manage it. You've always got to come back. You can't just like set the goal and then go away. You've always got to be readjusting because, you have to correct your course as you go along. So there is a process in order to reach your goals. And that process is very important. It should not be overlooked.
Now, talking about the process of quitting and things like that, and we've been talking about jobs, we've been talking about relationships. Those are like the main 2, I guess, like they come first. Maybe unhealthy eating, right? These other things. Does these steps work with things like unhealthy eating or quitting smoking or breaking a porn addiction or something like that? Does it work for every area of our lives?
Yeah. Yes. It does. Now, each area of your life, of course, there are the specifics. The details are going to be different because if you're trying to, say, quit smoking cigarettes, you're going to have to do something different than if you're trying to quit a negative mentality or quit a bad relationship.
Judging or something like that.
The specific. Mm-hmm. So the specific things, the details of what you do will vary. But the steps are going to be the same. I mean, it doesn't matter. You're still going to have to go through certain steps, through certain things in order to give up something. So, again, kind of depending on what it is you're giving up, that will dictate the specifics of what it is you need to do within each step.
Now, I know we've covered some of the steps already, but if we was to kind of look at them like an overview, what are the 4 steps that you've come up with?
Yeah, so the 4 steps that I determined, and like I said, this is coming from the research and the studies on the books. I told you I read every book that I could find on the subject of quitting, and I've read every study that I could get my hands on. And what I found when I looked at this material is that I could boil down and summarize everything into one of these 4 areas. So I just kind of put it all together and created this 4-step process. And I used the word quit, QUIT, as an acronym to describe the 4 steps, just to make it easy to remember. So the first step, which is the Q, stands for quit quickly. Quit quickly. Quit quickly just means I'll give you the short version. Quit quickly just means you need to recognize as fast as you can when something is not working and stop doing it. Because the most successful people, they don't continue to do things that don't work for them. Now, people who are not successful, we continue to try to push through and we don't recognize that you should give this up. But the successful, the wealthy people, they will give it up immediately and start to do something else that's going to be more productive for them. So understanding really fast that something is not working, the faster you recognize it's not working and the faster you give that up, the more successful you're going to be. So that's the first step, quit quickly. And then there's some things you need to do, of course, to recognize that. The second step, which is the U, understand negative emotions. And that's some of the things we've been talking about now, which is recognizing that there are emotional things that may prevent you from disengaging or from quitting something. Like we mentioned, like the sunk cost fallacy. If you can understand that this idea that we've invested so much in the past, we've invested all the money, we've invested the resources. If you can recognize that thing that you put in the past, you should not make a decision based on that, but you should make a decision based on the future. In other words, where do I want to be? Not what have I already done? That's one of the things that could help you get past the emotional baggage that prevents you from quitting. So the second step, and again, there's other things as well, but the second step is to understand those negative emotions and understand how to navigate around them. And that's Q, that's you. I is to initiate new goals. Because as we mentioned just a few moments ago, when you give up something, you can't just, stop altogether. You have to create some new goals for yourself. And then the last one is the T, QUIT, is to transform your behavior. Because when you give up something and you create some new goals, you cannot do the same thing that you were doing before. I mean, if you're going to stop smoking cigarettes, you can't keep doing the same behavior, whatever it was. In other words, you can't continue going to the Walgreens and buying a package of cigarettes, right? You got to stop doing that. So you got to adjust your behavior in some way in order to be successful after you give up something. So that's the 4 steps, QUIT. Quit quickly, understand the negative emotions, initiate your new behavior, and initiate your new goals, and then transform your behavior.
You give some examples as well of like stars or just like notable people who have quit something to go on and do something else great, right? And it's not necessarily that they were in something bad or whatever the case is. You talk about what's his name, Vontae Davis or whatever, quit the NFL. Michael Jordan quit basketball, started baseball. And then quit baseball to go back and then to win some more championships. The Rock quit wrestling to become a movie star. Now he's in all the top blockbusters out there now, And so these are people who have quit, and have continued to go on and be successful, right? And the different things that they were like easy, like you're always going to do this, or you've been here 20 years, you might as well stay, let this be your legacy. Like, no, I got some other things that I want to do, but you can't balance the two, right?
Yeah. May need to quit something. It's because of your life cycle. In other words, going back to say The Rock or Arnold Schwarzenegger, if Arnold Schwarzenegger was a bodybuilder and he actually successful at all of those things, but at some point you can no longer be a bodybuilder, right? Because your body is going to change as the aging process. So he found something else to do. He said, hey, I'm at the top of my game. I'm a bodybuilder, but now I'm going to be an actor, and that's going to take me further, into my next stage of life. And then at some point, you can't be an action star. He says, you know what? I'm going to be a governor, and then that's going to take me further. So we should recognize that life circumstances will sometimes dictate the need for you to change. And I think that's what also happened with Michael Jordan. The reason he quit basketball, and went to baseball is his dad had gotten killed. And he said that, of course, he was devastated. He kind of lost his edge for the game of basketball. So he gave up the game. He retired, but he still wanted to do something. So he said that his dad always wanted him to be a baseball player. So he, in honor of his father who had just been killed, he went and played baseball. But when he did that, he recognized he was not good at baseball. So what did he do? He quit and went back to basketball, which was a very good move because he won 3 more championships. We got the 3-peat, and he becomes the best player arguably on the planet, and people can debate that, but arguably he's either the best or at least one. Nobody can debate that he's at least one of the best players. But that would have never happened if he had not given up the pursuit of baseball. So that is a very good example of, sometimes you do need to quit for various reasons. And when you do, you don't have to necessarily be losing or quitting for a bad reason.
Yeah. Well, yeah, just like in the example of Vontae Davis, like, we kind of see that in a lot of the movies or whatever. Like somebody's about to sign this big contract or go off and move cross country to take a new job that's going to bring about all the money, and then halfway through the movie or the climax, they take the contract and they throw it away just so they can be with their kids or do what they love, versus, you know, trading off a passion for like this exchange of money, which isn't worth it because they wouldn't be happy and be able to thrive with their family and things like that. So we see those kind of scenarios just woven through a lot of movies, actually, right?
Oh, sure. And that happens in real life, too. Like you said, we know that Dave Chappelle, for the people who are familiar with him, you know, he was at the height of his comedy career on TV. They offered him about $50 million and he walked away from it. We also saw that with, you know, as you mentioned, Vontae Davis, same thing. He left the NFL. Magic Johnson just recently gave up. He was the president of a professional basketball team, the Los Angeles Lakers, and he just quit being the president. They say, wow, why would you quit being the president? I mean, this is like a dream, right? Nobody quits being the president of the Los Angeles Lakers. And he said, well, it wasn't making me happy. I wasn't winning. I wasn't, good at it. So he gave it up because he felt that it's better to do something that he is going to be passionate about, that he's going to be good at, than to just keep doing it, for the money or the prestige. So that happens in the movies, but it also happens in real life.
Yeah. Now, what about the the calculations of it, like calculating when to quit? We've been talking about that, but because some people quit spur of the moment. And they regret it and they can't go back to it, right? Versus doing some soul searching and knowing this is I need to pull out, right? Versus just spur of the moment, get mad and in your feelings and I quit. And you're like, oh man, I shouldn't have did
that. That is probably the number one worst reason to quit. You should never quit spur of the moment. That's analogous to I'm losing, so I'm gonna take my basketball and go home. Well, that's the worst. That's the worst thing you can do. You don't want to do that. If something is not going good or you're mad about something, you need to think through the thing. Decide: is this still a goal of mine? Does this thing still serve me? If the thing is still viable and is still part of your dreams, part of your goal, if it's still part of your plan, then you need to suck it up and keep moving forward. Go home, take a few deep breaths, complain, to your spouse or significant other, and keep it moving. And then come back the next day and get back on the job. So you don't want to do that on the spur of the moment. You always want to think about it, let it kind of marinate in your brain. Is this still my goal? Does this thing still get me where I want to be? And if it is, you suck it up and you keep moving. So spur of the moment quitting is the number one worst thing for you to do.
I'm reminded of the 2-week notice on the job. Yeah. You put in that 2-week notice. Hey, I've been thinking about it. I wrote this letter. I talked with the bosses, versus just abruptly quitting and walking away, burning your bridges, burning your frame of reference for the next job, all that kind of stuff, right? That kind of doing it with bowing out gracefully even, right?
Oh, absolutely. You'd never, ever, and I'm going to say ever one more time, ever want to quit bad. You don't want to quit bad. You don't want to be on bad terms. You don't want to say bad things, because even if you hate your job, even if you hate your boss, even if you hate everybody in the organization, you just hate everybody, you still don't want to quit on bad terms. You want to say, hey, thank you for the opportunity to work here. It's been wonderful, but this is just not work for me, and you move on. Because you always want to keep your resources open. In other words, just getting a reference. If someone is going to call the company and ask for a reference, you want to at least be able to say, the person to be able to say, oh yeah, he was a great guy. This job didn't work out for him. He wanted to do some other things. But if you go out, angry or cursing people out, all kinds of crazy stuff, you lose that as a resource. And why should you lose that? If you've been working there 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, that's a good resource for you. You want to keep those options open.
Yep. Part of your legacy, man, If you've been there, if you've put up with it that long, a lot of people do it though, man. A lot of people freak out. They can't really hold that peace and calculate, and they just do it spur of the moment. But even that can be made right too, right? So man, if people want to check out the book, where's the best place for them to go to check it out?
Oh, sure. The book is called Quit: The Last Principle of Success. You can buy the book on Amazon. Just type in my name, Stanley G. Robertson, or you can go to my website, thequitdoctor.com. And that's probably the easiest place. If you can't remember, the title of the book or whatever, just go to thequitdoctor.com.
thequitdoctor.com. Stanley G. Robertson. Man, for me, I was blessed to be fired from my job. Quitting would have been, because you want to make sure it's going to be a smooth transition, especially stepping out of doing something big. I look at my life and I have a family and stuff, and I would have never quit just because the financial security thing, you want it to equal out and be a smooth transition, and it's not always like that. So for me, I was let go from my job, but I never went back to another one. I didn't pick up a 9-to-5, so I quit the pursuit of the 9-to-5 and all that kind of stuff. And it worked out. It works out. You can make it happen again, going back to what we was talking about. You can actually work at a job or have a life where you love what you do. And a lot of people can't fathom that. They get up and enjoy life. They think it's this burden, this of being mankind, or the sin of Adam, or whatever, that we have to work by the sweat of our brow. But man, you can wake up every day and do what you love for a living. You can write a book. You can help people. All the things that you went through and learn and all that stuff, to bring it to the table and pay it forward, man. And it works out for you. So, man, I really appreciate this interview, brother. Thanks for coming on, hanging out with me. And everybody, make sure you go to the website and check out his book. It's good stuff.
All right. Thanks, Derek.
Thank you, Stanley. We'll do it again, man.
Right.
All right. Bless. Stanley G. Robertson, ladies and gentlemen. Good stuff. Sometimes you got to quit, man. There's a song. It's a country song. It's talking about playing 5-card draw or something, but you got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, and I don't know the rest of the lyrics, but it's talking about knowing when to bow out, stacking your chips and pulling out. Because again, when you don't do that, you're making it hostile for everyone around you, because you don't want to be there. And if you don't want to be there, you're gonna be disgruntled, gossip and slander and just complaining all the time. You're going to be known for someone who complains. Literally, you can be in a job, you can be in a situation where you love it, where you're not complaining, you're just overjoyed, and you want to stay away from complainers. You're going to do your job the best you can and love it, man. And just knowing where that is, right? Knowing how to get from point A to point B. It could be hard for some people, but you have to know when to do it. You look in the scriptures, like the story of Ishmael. I think it was Abraham's son. He with a woman, and he birthed a son by the name of Ishmael, and he wasn't supposed to have that son. He stayed a little bit too long. He wasn't supposed to go there. And many times we get into situations and circumstances, and we get into things that we shouldn't do. And people become casualties around you. Whether in that situation, your coworkers are a casualty, the situations where, again, you're starting a business or starting a podcast, you spend money, and they're just casualties all around you. Going back to the scriptures again, I'm always reminded of Jonah in the well. I mean, that story. He's running from God. He's in a place that he's not supposed to be. He's doing some things he's not supposed to be doing. He's disgruntled himself, and he tries to run from his calling, where God wants him, where he's supposed to be, that perfect place. In the midst of that, he gets on a boat, and he's going to another city that he's not supposed to be going to. And essentially what happens is those people who are on the same boat with him, God is tracking him down. God is petitioning him to do what I called you to do. You're not supposed to be there. Do what I called you to do. And then so the winds and the waves and the storms and all of these outside forces start coming in to woo Jonah back. and say, look, I'm not going to let you get away that easy, man. And the weird thing about it is the people on the boat, the guys came together and said, someone's done something to anger the gods. And then so the boat's about to capsize and sink, and they start throwing their own personal possessions and their belongings off the side of the boat and all that kind of stuff. And whenever they do, they're trying to make it where the boat's not going to sink because they think that, that somebody's done something. And then Jonah finally comes forward and says, look, it's not y'all, it's me. I'm running from God, and he's going to, as soon as you get rid of me, this storm's going to subside and you guys will go back to everything normal. Well, he does that. He's running from God. He jumps off the boat. They throw him off or whatever. And the people on the boat go back to normal. They just go back to smooth sailing because they're where they're supposed to be, right? But in the midst of that, they lost their personal possessions. Like, they got rid of a lot of stuff and they threw it over the boat. And it's the person who's in this place where they're not supposed to be, and it messes up the synergy of it all. So being in this place where you're supposed to be, and that's where we all need to be, in the flow. Synchronicities happening, opportunities, manifestation, everything is happening. You're in the perfect will of God, not in the permissible will where you can just do anything. The permissible will is like, you want to start a podcast? Sure. Free will. Do it and see what happens. You're not supposed to do it. You do it anyway. Then you got to learn. So that's the good thing about it, is we're able to learn what it feels like if we keep going. And some of us keep doing it anyway. Some of us, have to be reminded time and time and time again. But if you're going to get to this place where you're going to be successful, where you're going to be able to have longevity and stability, you may have to back out of some things. You may have to repent. Metanoia. Turn from the things that are killing you. If you have unhealthy addictions, food addictions, alcohol, pornography, in a relationship, you're in a bad job, in just a hostile work environment, you got to pull out of that stuff. You need to quit. You just need to quit, man. But again, like I said, don't do nothing abruptly. People want to make sure that they have something to replace it with. Like, I don't, like, again, with the job thing, like people who just quit jobs and they don't know where they're going. I'll go out and get a job tomorrow. Make the transition as smoothly as you can. Take a break. Tell them you're sick. Go do a job interview. Whatever you got to do. Try to make that transition for you and your family a lot easier than just, quitting cold turkey and I'm going to start a podcast. And like, do you even know how to monetize a podcast? Do you know how to get guests for your podcast? Do you know how to submit a RSS feed and get on iTunes? And do you know how to do that? Have you done the work, right? Versus just quitting cold turkey. You need to do the research and all that stuff. And then if you do it, then it'll work out great. And then you can make your transition seamless where nobody's getting hurt. Your family's getting hurt because you ain't providing for your family or whatever the case is. There's right ways to go about and doing it with the less casualties as possible, where nobody's getting hurt, where it works out for everybody. You know what I'm saying? You quitting that job opens it up for somebody who don't have a job, who may love what you're doing. I was on jobs with people, they love doing that stuff. I used to work at a job with a guy, he loved cutting grass. Like, this joker would have grass all over his face. He wouldn't even wipe it off, man. This guy, he loved it. I hated it. Hate cutting grass, being out in the sun and just, I'm wet and it's just nasty. And like, I'll do it, right? But it's not what I'm called to do. It's not my passion. For somebody like this guy who was cutting grass, he loved it. Working on lawnmowers, and my lawnmowers break down. I hate working on that stuff. This guy loves it. It gets his brain working. You bring him his lawnmower, this joker will fix it for free. He loved fixing lawnmowers. He loved doing maintenance work. Everybody's not wired like that. And there's an envy. Again, I say the word envy, but you can use that for good, as a being envious of people who are where they're supposed to be. Again, I always talk about a few people that I really felt like lit something within me, like the tattoo artists that I used to go get tattooed from. I would go to their job and they love to be there. They get to wake up and draw on you for a living and make really good money. I mean, these guys are making like, man, double, sometimes triple digits a month in some cases from the tattoos that they're doing. And they just get to wake up every day and draw. They're making great money. Friends telling jokes. They just love to be there. They're doing what they're supposed to do. So when you go there and you see those people doing it, you're like, man, I wish I would love. Let me tattoo with y'all. Y'all got any positions open, And but then you see other people like artists who are just comfortable in their skin, whether it's dealing with religion or doctrine or whatever. They just comfortable and they know who they are. I listen to podcasts and see people doing it like Joe Rogan and stuff like that. And it's like, man, there's a part of envy. It's like, man, I want to do that, and I know the Bible says that we're supposed to be the envy of all nations. So people are to look at us and be envious. But I want you to envy my marriage, envy my lifestyle, envy my music, envy this, because I'm doing it to the best of my ability, and I'm doing what I was put here to do, doing what I'm called to do. And it's the same thing with you guys. When you're in the place that you're supposed to be, people know, man. You may wear a good mask and play that hypocrite and play those multiple roles because you have to, but people know. They can see through it. It's paper thin. Being in a place where you're doing what you love for a living, man. And we're in a situation now, and we talk about this a lot, where you can do it. You can start a podcast, promote it to the right people, put ads on it, and make enough money to pay the light bills. Sell enough T-shirts to pay the power bill, and you know what I'm saying, and all that kind of stuff. And we have the ability to do it, and everyone's doing it around you. And if you're called to do that, you just got to step out and do it. But first, you got to quit. You got to quit doing the things that you're not supposed to be doing. You got to quit wasting time. Quit, wasting time playing video games when you're supposed to be podcasting. Right? I've had to do that. I've had to uninstall games, or, don't even, like, there'll be times where I'll just have Facebook up and I'll just be scrolling and I'll catch myself like, what am I looking for? My daughter will watch like YouTube videos, or I'll watch them as well, but usually my daughter, because like, she used to have a YouTube channel as well. And it's like, you're spending time watching all these videos and you're inspired and you want to be a YouTuber and you want to you need to turn that video off and go make a video, like make your own, like quit. Like, you can take in interviews and podcasts. Again, I don't listen to as much podcasts as I used to because I'm too busy creating them, whether it's doing it, spending time creating it, or emailing a guest, or writing a bio, or creating the imagery, or trying to share it out and get ad revenue, whatever it is. So like everything that comes into play, the situation changes. But being in the place again where you get to love what you love, what you do for a living. I mean, I'm reminded of this song. I love this song, but it's by the Dirty Heads. I think it's called Vacation. And it's talking about, it says, I'm on vacation every single day because I love my occupation. So every day is like a day that, it's surreal. Because I don't know where you are, man, but I knew where I was. And so essentially I know who to talk to in this podcast, because I'm talking to the younger version of me, sitting in that dead-end job, stuck there, been there 10 years, feel like you might die there. But you know you're destined for more. You got greatness inside of you, but you're delivering car parts. You do it to the best your ability, and at the same time, don't complain about it, because there's people who would love that job, and most likely that job is an answer to prayer, right? You probably prayed for that place that you're complaining about. Never do that. That's not a good place. When you have to catch yourself, if you start doing that, start complaining about the things that you begged God for. It's like, oh, I gave it to you. Now what? Oh Lord, I need you to give me something else, right? But learning to become content in all things. And it's this weird dichotomy of being content, but yet still striving for more. To be content, but strive for more, strive for greatness. It's a weird place, but there's a perfect peace there. The Bible says godliness with contentment is great gain. So again, find out what you love to do. Learn how to manifest it, bring it to the table. Get with God, get with the Creator. Don't work against Him. make this transition a lot easier. With that, I'm going to say peace and shalom. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. Again, if you want to check out the new T-shirts that we have, just released the new Sacred Geometry T-shirt collection. I said that I was going to share it on the screen, but I had it set up wrong. Those of you listening on the podcast, and you can't see it anyway. But I'm pretty proud of it. Been working on this for a while, and there's some pretty cool designs, and I'm going to probably end up working on some more, but I'm pretty happy with it. I got the Merkaba, the isohedron, the flower of life, and the sacred spiral of the hexadecacon or something like that. There's some interesting stuff. Again, vibration, sacred geometry is the language of the universe. Again, it's the word of God because it's consistent. It changes not. The vibrations don't lie. Go check out the collection. I think you guys would love it. Just go to truthseekah.com/shop. It'll send you straight there. With that, I'm going to say peace and shalom, man. Thank you guys for all the support, all the love. Everyone supporting via Patreon. Again, couldn't do this without your help. So thank you. If you want to partner with me, see all the things that we have available, I'm pretty sure we made it worthwhile. You get my entire collection of music, Thursday night School of the Mystics, Sunday morning Seer class, bunch of cool stuff. Patreon.com/TruthSeekah. See you guys later. Peace.
Your will is so much higher than mine, so much higher than mine, so much deeper than mine, so much deeper than mine.
Well, that does it for this episode, folks. To hear more episodes of the TruthSeekah podcast, head over to TruthSeekah.com. And if you're wanting to support the show and get rewards, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/TruthSeekah.